poppin', y'all? It's Finesse Squire, and I'm here to talk to you about if I'm the only person that gets offended when called a strong black woman. I know it's supposed to be intended to be complimentary, but when I hear it, I'm really offended. And oftentimes I don't have the mental bandwidth or fortitude at that moment to explain to someone why it's offensive, so I never really go into it. Also, if I can tell someone doesn't mean something in an offensive way, then I oftentimes won't correct them, and I just don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But oftentimes that's at the expense of my own comfort. What a black woman thing to do, right? So let's get into what a strong black woman really is and where the cultural trope kind of comes from. In my opinion, it kind of started in response to slavery. As we all know, well, as I hope and pray we all know, black men were stripped from their homes during slavery, causing them to be unable to provide for their families and be there. They weren't able to be husbands to their wives. They weren't even able to be fathers to their kids because they were completely stripped away. And so black women, in response, being the only people in the households, had to take on the roles of both a father and mother figure. So we became strong, almost hero-esque type women that were capable of doing a lot because we had to and were required to. And science says, just as blue eyes, blonde hair, all of those things are passed down as traits within people, so is the traumas that your ancestors experienced as well. So oftentimes the things that made them be strong black women, all those traumas that led them to have the characteristics of strength, leading in a household, leading in the world, and all these other strong characteristics are passed down as well. And so we oftentimes, as younger black women, take on these roles, even if we aren't required to yet. It's just a bit in us. There can be some positives and negatives to it. Some black women say that they experience it as a positive, meaning that in the face of racial discrimination, trauma, and other things, this idea of a strong black woman helps them become that in those situations. Other black women says that it affects them negatively, meaning that in times of trauma, in times of disarray, they feel that they need to be that, causing them not to be able to grieve, feel their own pain, feel their own emotions and trauma. Oftentimes this strong black female character that we try to project makes us neglect our own emotions. Many black women in America report having to feel like they have to fill this role of being a superwoman. They have to be self-sacrificing, without emotion, all the other things I was describing a bit earlier, which can be extremely detrimental to a black woman's health. So although it's intended as a compliment, it has a lot of cultural implications that have been tied to black women as years progress, causing it to be a little bit problematic. And I know that you guys will never believe this, I'm not even that person that tries to turn everything into a cultural womanhood discussion. Or I might be. But I mean, well, and a lot of it is the truth. It can be an extremely detrimental term. And in this video, I hope to give you a few reasons why. The first is that when it comes time to help strong black girls or fearless black women, there's oftentimes national radio silence. Everyone knows the quote by Malcolm X that says the most degraded woman in America is the black woman. And really the most degraded person in America actually is the quote, is the black woman. And what's crazy to me is people so confidently say that quote in 2021 when it was said in the 60s. It shouldn't be 50 years later, you guys know I suck at math, 60 some odd years later, that this is still the most common quote, and this is still something that's recited, and everyone says it, but no one actually, to me, does anything about it. We just are constantly referred to as the strong black woman, the self-sacrificing black woman, the fearless black woman, but when lent a hand to help, or when we ask people to lend a hand to help, they're like, oh, black women are so strong, they can handle it themselves. It can be really detrimental. The second thing is that this is flat out not by choice. I never woke up one day and was like, yes, I want to be a really strong black woman. I want to put others before myself constantly to the point of my own detriment. I want to not get that much aid in hospitals. I want to be treated differently in the world publicly. I never wanted to be that. And so to be called it, it's almost like, it's a bit alarming because there's so many other aspects of my personality that I put so much time and effort to. That's not necessarily one of them. Another thing is sometimes it feels like a bit of a read. I'm a firm believer that something will only offend you if it's a bit true. And so when people say that, I'm like, ugh, why do I come off as so strong? Do you guys not go through feel the same stuff? You guys guys don't grieve either? No, that's just a me thing. Oh, okay. My bad. I thought that was like a national thing. It's just a bit alarming because sometimes it's just not by choice. The third is that it affects us in other areas of life. For example, in the doctor's office, Black women have higher rates of mortality during childbirth because doctors are less likely to believe them when they say they're going through pain. They believe that we literally cannot experience pain to the point where when we're telling them we're going through it, they don't hear us. And it's national news. Serena Williams said that she experienced the same exact things and that she had to constantly say she was in pain until she was actually tended to. And that's just a big thing like that. Another thing is in the doctor's office, Black women experience higher rates of sickle cell disease. That isn't acknowledged. And it even transfers to really small things, like at the nail shop. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but people think we don't have cuticles. I pull my hand back and I say, ow, and everyone looks at me like, that hurt? I'm like, yes! The fourth is just, what if I don't necessarily want to be described as strong? Like, there are so many other aspects, again, like I said, that I really put pride into my personality. For example, my fashion. I'm giving you my fashion right now with this vintage champion sweater that a lot of people don't have. You probably don't even know where to get it. And I'm trying to give you myself on a platter, and I'm giving you this wit, this humor, this stylishness. And the first thing you think of is strong. Sometimes it's just really not even true. I don't know if you guys get this same thing. But when a guy's flirting with you and he's like, oh yeah, you're a strong, independent Black woman. And it's like, oh, thank you. But sometimes I feel like it doesn't have to be all that. Like when you say that, I'm like, oh, you're probably associating me with all these other characteristics, like unwillingness to budge, won't let you be a leader, depriving you of your manlyhood, or emasculating you. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I am all that. And I don't want to be associated with such. But then I don't want to correct you because I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. Like, do you see the constant conundrums and issues that go through our head when deciding when we want to tell these people things? It's complicated. The last thing that I want to highlight is this self-sacrificing piece. Because of our race and gender, Black and brown women usually understand discrimination because of both. Meaning that when we look at an instance of discrimination, we view it one way because of our race and another way because of our gender. And oftentimes we view it a way because of our race and gender because you can't separate it. Someone, Corey King, when I was soliciting viewer feedback on this issue, said that it's kind of similar to what we do with essential workers. Meaning that we're like, wow, this is so amazing that you're going out and working. Wow, this is so amazing that you're out there in the field. And then when it's time to pay them more, everyone's like, well, I don't know. But we're so quick to highlight all the amazing things that they do, the fact that they're putting themselves out there on the line during a time of crisis and acknowledging them. But when it's time to actually give them tangible things to help them, we get quiet. And I was like, wow, that's such a good analogy. We're so self-sacrificing. Which is something about myself and about Black and brown women that I would never change, but oftentimes it's to our own detriment, whether that be health or societal detriment. And so that's just another conversation about why I feel like maybe think twice when calling someone a strong Black woman, or maybe 3 times, or maybe think 4 times, or maybe don't say it at all.